Let's go back to nuclear technology. We can power the world through, basically clean energy with nuclear technology, or we can blow up nations, right? I think all new advancements in technology can be used for good or for evil, right? And the evil one will always want us to use it for evil, and there are people that will use it for that, but people continually have to use it for good to be able to fight back.
Finding time with God. Is that a struggle for you? Like it is for me? I mean, life's busy. Is it wearing you down? There are a lot of mental health issues on the rise, and people are wondering how the church can make a positive impact in bringing healing. It's now the time for the body of Christ to engage deeply with the world on these kinds of issues to shine the light of God's kingdom into everyday lives. So welcome to the Truth Changes Everything podcast. This is where we explore where God is at work, changing everything through Jesus, who is the incarnation of the truth. Today, we're going to be learning about exciting new applications and how to wisely engage with different technological tools for God's kingdom. My guest is Matthew Potter. Now, Matthew is the co-founder of Praycom. That is the world's #1 app for daily prayer and faith-based audio content. Matt brings in expertise in the areas of strategizing, change, building tech products and apps, finding markets in the continuously growing and evolving technology industry. And at a time when Matt was looking for ways to give back spiritually and apply his expertise to do something bigger for God's kingdom, he ran into his friend Steve, who needed some spiritual encouragement. He'll tell you the story. But shortly after this divine run-in, he and Steve launched Praycom, which will be the focus of our conversation today. So let's welcome Matthew Potter to the Truth Changes Everything podcast. Matthew Potter, welcome to the Truth Changes Everything podcast.
Honored and blessed to be here, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me.
I've been looking forward to our conversation because you are the co-founder of Praycom. Everybody's talking about this, and there's so many interesting aspects to it, but I would love if you could just share the origin story of this app, the organization, how you and your buddy got together to do it. I think this is fascinating.
So for me, Jeff, it all started with a 15-year-old girl who was walking down the street. She had just found out that she was pregnant and she was going to an abortion clinic. And on her way to that clinic, there happened to be a church. And so she stopped in at the church to talk to the pastor about some advice on the biggest decision she was going to make in her life up to that point. And the pastor was a brand new pastor, so he was a little nervous. So he went in the back, actually called his friend that he went to seminary with, and said, hey, what should I tell this 15-year-old girl? And his friend was a church planter who just planted like a 20-person church in a high school gym in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. And, the church planter said, you know what? It's providence that you called me this morning. I've been counseling this married couple who's been trying to have children for 10 years and couldn't. And they're Christians. They just joined my church plant. Why don't you go back in there and ask that girl if she'd be willing to give her baby up for adoption? And so the pastor went back in and the girl said yes. And I was the baby the girl brought into the church, and I got adopted because of these two pastors that were friends.
Wow.
So my life started out providentially right at that moment where, it could have been taken away. I went to school out in Los Angeles. Got the really unique opportunity, Jeff, to meet Steve Jobs. And I didn't know at the time, but he's also adopted. Super inspirational guy. So when Steve launched the App Store my senior year of college, I actually dropped out of school, started a company that built apps super hard, bootstrapped that company. We built it over 10 years, built over 8,000 apps in the App Store for all the major real estate companies in the United States. It was super, super fun, but, I'd accomplished my goals and just reached this weird point in my life where I didn't have to work anymore if I didn't want to. And I wanted to give back to the church that gave me so much. Yeah. And I just called my pastor and his daughter, who was my best friend, and said, hey, how can I help and give back to the church? And they said, hey, why don't you help us open a new campus? And I said, I'm an introverted tech entrepreneur who didn't go to seminary. That sounds terrifying. And they said, you know what, pray about it. So I prayed about it. And the very next day, Dr. Jeff, I ran into my good friend, Steve Gattina, at a coffee shop in Westlake Village. And Steve and I had known each other because we played on rival high school football teams, and we were in the same entrepreneur groups together in our area. And I just asked Steve how he was doing, and he just kind of told me that he was doing terrible. Steve grew up to a single Jewish mom on welfare. He ended up going to the Air Force Academy to play football. He got injured in a training accident, and just this shows a lot about Steve's character. But over the course of 6 months, he got better and walked onto USC's football team, earning a position on the team, winning a Rose Bowl under Pete Carroll. And then as a part of a homework assignment, he started his first company, which was building professional YouTube channels for Fortune 500 companies.
Wow.
So he built Red Bull's YouTube channel, Marriott Hotels, Mattel Toys, the LA Dodgers, Herbalife, a bunch of other companies. And then he had the opportunity to sell that company and become the 29-year-old CEO of the world's largest aerial production company. So they had 40 aircraft, helicopters, planes, and jets. They would film all the major motion pictures like Jurassic World, Transformers, Maverick, all the different movies that were coming out that had airplanes or helicopters or jets in them. And then they would also work for the FBI, CIA, Homeland Security. It's basically the same job, do surveillance, and you just send in the video content to a different place. Instead of a studio, it's going to the CIA or FBI.
Wow. So he had everything. This is a guy who had everything.
Yeah.
Right.
He had everything.
This is the American dream. And yet
he was making movies, catching bad guys, and saving lives at 29, and it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
Right. And so, unfortunately, September 11th, 2015, Steve's business partner died in a plane crash in Medellin, Colombia. They were filming a movie with Tom Cruise called American Made. They were stunt flying all day in the jungles of Colombia, and just routine trip, taking the plane back to the hangar. Steve's business partner died in a plane crash. And because of that, Steve began searching for something to help with that grief that he was facing in his life. And a former Navy SEAL that worked at the company gave Steve an audio sermon from a pastor, and it changed his life, and he became a Christian.
Wow.
And in that moment of becoming a Christian, Steve was kind of mad about it. He was like, why? And this is what he told me at the coffee shop. He said, why doesn't the ESPN for Christians exist? We have the worldwide digital destination for sports. Why don't we have the worldwide digital destination for Christians online? Wow. It doesn't make sense to me. Right. If there was a brand like that, I would have known about it, and I would have went out and sought this content. And because, Steve didn't grow up going to church. He grew up to a single Jewish mom on welfare. He had a different path than me. I grew up in church, going to church every week with my parents, It was kind of ingrained. And so I said, you know what, Steve, you're right. And that's where the birth of Pray.com happened, was at that coffee shop. And the seeds were planted when Steve's business partner died. And then, we decided to start the company with two other incredible co-founders, Mike Lynn and Ryan Beck. Ryan was like the largest crystal meth dealer in our area, actually. Wow. He went to prison, got mentored by a couple of prisoners, and found Christ in jail, got out, couldn't get a job, and a church locally here nearby gave him a job as the facilities manager. And they ended up giving him a scholarship to go to college, Calvin College. And that's where Ryan got his computer science degree with a minor in philosophy. I saw that you also did philosophy too.
Yes. But
yeah, Ryan ended up working for a bunch of different insurance companies, building all their back-end systems. And now he's our CTO.
Wow.
So, and Ryan went to high school with Steve. Steve was working on being All-American. Ryan was working on being America's Most Wanted. And, but now, Ryan's incredible. He also went to seminary too. And he's just changing lives all over the world. And then Mike Mike grew up Catholic. He's still Catholic. Watched his dad go to a paper mill for 50 years, the same door in Green Bay, Wisconsin, of this paper mill. And Mike's mom actually got swindled by a financial advisor. And so Mike changed his major from marketing to finance because he didn't want anyone to be swindled out of their money again. And he actually met Steve at a conference at USC. And that's how Mike became our co-founder.
Wow.
And just loved the idea of helping change people's lives through Pray.com. So
Well,
that
this
was
is
October 22nd, 2016, about 8 years ago.
okay. 8 years ago. Wow, it's
Yeah.
it's a remarkable story and a providential one. It's clear that this is the kind of team that only God could put together.
That's
This
right.
is like
That's
Ocean's
right.
11 heavenly style.
That's right.
Yeah. I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about pray.com and tech for a minute. I
Yeah.
know people spend 4.5 hours a day. I think that's what the research is showing on their phones, which is that amounts to 70 days a year of the 365 that we have available. And there's a huge amount of discussion, especially in generational people who are thinking about generational issues. What kind of stewardship is that? Or how does that change the way we think or the way we act and interact with other people? And I'm curious how you've had those discussions with your team about how pray.com can move into a situation where it seems that people are so obsessed with their devices that they're not living life the way they're supposed to. And then at the same time, you're asking them, okay, here's one more thing for you to look at on your phone. I know you've had all those discussions, and I wish you'd just take us inside of them for a minute.
Yeah. I don't think Steve Jobs and the people over at Samsung and others, I don't think they believed they knew what they were doing when they launched the phone. I don't think it was nefarious, right? When they were building the App Store and all of these things. But it's super interesting because it's changed our behaviors completely. And if we go back and think about the radio and the launch of the radio and how many people it reached and how it changed behaviors completely, right? For people, we were working class people, people were farming, and now all of a sudden their Wednesdays, they were listening to War of the Worlds and they thought aliens were literally coming down, listening to this audio drama through the radio, right? And so we had change of behavior with radio. We had change of behavior with TV, people sitting more, watching in front of the television at night. And now we have a change of behavior with the phone, right? And through those moments of technological change, Christians have always been there to be able to take back that technology for the kingdom. So the way that we think about it is we're not going to be able to change people's behaviors of them being on the phone. We should be able to be one of the things that they can do while on the phone, since they're spending their time there already, go to where people are at. And that's kind of the thought process. Everything is fighting for your focus. And we're seeing the mental health issues in America from social media, big social media, and others through comparison, and all sorts of things that are happening in people's minds as they're consuming this content. So we need to go where people are at. We need to take technology back for the kingdom. We need to inject healthy habits, healthy biblical principles, the Bible, the stories of the Bible, different pastors' content, guided prayers. A lot of the things that Pray.com offers, digital devotionals, are trying to help develop and create those healthy habits of prayer. And so that's the way we think about it. We're not going to be able to, we can't get rid of these, right? But we got to go where people are at. And if everything's fighting for your focus, you know what? Part of that should be focusing on Christ.
I like the way you're approaching this as how do you use this technology to glorify God? In the early days of radio, you had the old time gospel hour, which was the number one listened to program in the United States. When television came out, you had people like Billy Graham, movies, and others. So each new technology, the question was, how do we use this to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ? And there were people out there who did that, and they were really innovative. I was just looking at a couple of examples the other day. One is, after World War II, people knew that the Holocaust had taken place, but they didn't talk about the Holocaust. In fact, many Jewish people didn't want to talk about it. They just wanted to forget it. And all of a sudden, it's like it never happened. 6 million people just disappeared and nothing ever happened. And I was reading someone the other day who said, that all was the case until the 1970s when some secular program came out on television and all of a sudden everybody's talking about the Holocaust. But the book, The Hiding Place, which is a Christian book, and the movie based on the book, The Hiding Place, came out before that. It was actually Christians who were the ones who drew attention to the Holocaust and its horrors to make sure that something like that would never happen again. So you're an innovator in that way. And I just really appreciate that. I'm thankful for it. Thank you. Could you take us inside just for a minute for those who aren't that familiar with Pray.com, because they will be, and when we finish this show, but take us inside the user experience. What happens when someone hears about it? They go on to the site. What do they do?
Yeah, most people hear about us through sharing. So we have 152 million shares of the app outside the app on other platforms like text or email, also social media as well. But so someone gets a link from a friend, from a family member of the app. They go in, they open the app, immediately our daily devotional pops up, and it's a devotional with a prayer at the end. And so you can listen in, you can also go along with it if you'd like to go along with it, but immediately you're developing a healthy habit of listening to a daily devotional and a guided prayer. And that's the goal, number one. And every time you open the app, that's the first thing you see. Once you complete that daily prayer, you're taken to a streak page where we are counting, helping you count the days in a row that you are developing that healthy habit of prayer. And then once you complete the streak page, you're on a leaderboard page where you can remind other people to not lose their streak, and you can praise people for completing their daily devotional for that day. After that page, you're able to share the app if you want to share the app, or you're taken to the main screen of content. And on the main screen, the home screen, you've got Pray Radio at the very top, where we have a bunch of different incredible pastors, tremendous Bible teachers on Pray Radio. And some of them are going back all the way to when radio was coming out, right? We also have Pray TV. We've got different people on Pray TV, like Gary Wilkerson. His dad was David Wilkerson that did The Cross and the Switchblade movie from back in the 70s, which is pretty cool. So just like we were talking about taking back technology for the kingdom. And then different podcasts from different incredible Bible teachers on there. And then a bunch of Pray original content. So we hired a 61-piece orchestra, former Disney voice actors and actresses. And we took the entire Bible and created it as almost a entertaining cinematic show. So you can hear your favorite Bible stories come to life in this cinematic audio format. We also built a sleep version of that so that people can listen to their favorite Bible stories to a specific tone and rhythm that helps you fall asleep. And then we have a kids version too to help teach your kids the Bible before bedtime. And parents absolutely love it. My nephews love it. They like replay David and Goliath every single night. I don't know why, but they just want David and Goliath every night. So my brother and sister-in-law, they play that for them every night. It's been great.
Yeah. So they're engaging. The entire family then can engage.
That's right.
And I'm remembering the times driving kids to school. That my kids are in their 20s now, but driving them to school, and we're always looking for something to listen to. Well, Pray.com can step in and help you with that.
That's right. Absolutely. Whether, and we've got different content that changes based on the time of day that you're listening. So content for the morning, for afternoon, if you're at lunch break or you're doing, you're exercising or you're doing your chores. And also when you get home from work, on your way home from work, or you're listening in bed before you fall asleep.
Now, the app is called Pray.com, and how does it encourage prayer? You've got the teaching aspect of it, but it's something I've always wondered about, because I have tough time. I'm one of those who, after 5 minutes of praying, I'm antsy. This is the longest I sit still for anything that I do, and I'm just curious how it helps build an attitude and a practice of prayer itself.
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's through that daily devotional and guided prayer experience. So that streak experience, we're continually reminding you to pray. You can also set it to different times if you'd like to, and add it to your calendar to remind you to pray. But we are reminding people in that right before they start their day, they're getting that push notification when they're waking up to go in and check your prayer and spend that time and moment with God. And so you do get the daily devotional. It has a great, sound background. It helps calm you right when you wake up. But that is your reminder to pray. And, what if 8 billion people on the planet prayed for 30 days in a row and they actually kept track? I think we'd be living in a lot different world.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, we certainly would. Hey, it's Dr. Jeff Myers. Almost nobody is excited about politics, but here's something exciting in the political season. Summit Ministries has produced a new course. It debunks 4 myths that keep Christians sidelined, and it's free for you to use with your family, your small group, your church, any way you see fit. Just go to summit.org/politics. Here's a quick trailer. So let me get this on the table. Most people hate politics. 65% of people say it makes them exhausted. 55% say it makes them angry. 4% say they get excited. When they're asked to choose words about how to describe politics, some of those I can't say on a family-oriented video. A lot of people in church don't want to talk about politics, especially in election years. Because it seems to divide people, we can't get unity. But is unity easy? Well, if you're married, is unity in your marriage easy? Nope. Is it worth it? Yes. But it takes good discussion. It takes mutual trust. It takes a common understanding of the core principles that make blessing and flourishing possible. In this course, we're going to talk about the 4 myths that keep Christians sidelined when it comes to politics. God doesn't care about politics. It's not my problem. Choosing between the lesser of 2 evils is a self-evil. Politics doesn't matter to what's really important. In one specific instance, you mentioned mental health earlier. Mental health issues. And the Spirituality and Clinical Practice Journal actually studied your app.
Absolutely.
And what they found is that using that app improved mental health over time. So make that connection for us, because there are lots of people struggling with their mental health. And to think of an app as having an effect is quite remarkable.
So we have an incredible chief data officer who came to us from a company called Harbor Freight Tools. He was there. He took Harbor Freight Tools from $100 million a year to $8 billion a year.
Wow.
And almost single-handedly was collecting all of the data to show like which products they should show in which stores, in which order, and which advertisements, millions of SKUs, just crunching large amounts of data. And his name is Victor Harris. He's an incredible guy. So when Victor came on our team and he brought 3 PhD data scientists with him, one of the first initiatives that we began planning was something called Pray Science. And it was very counterintuitive to me in the beginning. I was like, well, why should we do science? It sounds like it's going to lose a lot of money. And Victor and some of the members of the team just said, look, we are created in the image of God. Wouldn't you think by connecting with your creator, when you're created in the image of God, would help you with your physical body and your mental health, not just with your spiritual life, which is a huge thing as well, but wouldn't you think that it would help with your mental health? And I said, yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay, let's do this, right? And so we lit up Pray Science Division, and we've been working with some incredible universities and researchers, and we have just brought on our first PhD science researcher, Dr. Bree Laird, and she's the one that's been spearheading a lot of these studies that we've been doing. So we actually have a cross-sectional survey that we ran, and we just sent out a bunch of survey questions in the app, and what we came back with was, Well, functionally, people that use the app in more frequency during a week reported less mental health symptoms that they were going through. And so when we got that signal, we didn't just want to leave it at a cross-sectional survey. We did a an 8-week randomized trial of people that were using the app. And that study came back, and it's what you're referencing. It's, those people, we tracked people using the app, brand new users. And when they were using it for more than 5 days a week, they saw a outsized return on mental health symptoms going away, anxiety going away, depression going away. Some of these, really trauma filled and things that are deep rooted in people going away. And you know what? We don't believe it's the app. It's God, right?
Yeah.
It's God. We're just a conduit. But the way that we've built the content and the way that it's created, it has really helped a tremendous amount of people. And so we're actually doubling down, and we've gotten published now in 3 different scientific journals, all about, and it's not the first time prayer has been studied before. There's other studies on prayer that it increases the gray matter density in your brain when you pray and different things. And, it was super interesting to me because, you would think meditating helps a lot, but really meditating is focusing within and focusing on the problem and holding on to it. Whereas with prayer, you're giving your problem up to God, who has the power over that problem. And it's helped a lot of people. So we're doubling down on Pray Science, and you're going to see a lot more content coming out created using this methodology that we're going to do more studies on. So it's been really incredible to see the results.
Yeah. Are you studying the difference between people who already are religious and people who are non-religious?
So we don't ask that question in the survey if you're religious or not religious, but it is a randomized group of users that are trying Pray.com for the first time, that we did our second study on. And, those people could be religious. Pray.com is a filter, right? So it could be they're wanting to use the app because they're already a Christian, and we don't know what denomination or if they're Catholic or Protestant or Presbyterian or Baptist, but we also don't know where they're at in their faith journey. So that might be the next level of study is, if you come in and you have some level of experience with church or religion or no experience, how does that net out? So that might be another study that we would run. Right now, we don't know. It was a random group of people, and we don't know the level of study that they've done of the Bible or what denomination they are or how often they go to church or some of those other things that we're going to run more studies on. So
yeah,
it's a great question.
I think it'd be interesting because, you do have this sacred secular divide in culture, but
Yeah.
My suspicion is people are coming to pray.com either out of curiosity or because they have an emotional need of some sort that's not being met any other way. And so there are a lot of people out there who don't believe in God, who actually are spiritual. They would be open to something spiritual, which can be dangerous because there are all kinds of spiritual experiences that are false. But
Absolutely.
This gives them an opportunity to kind of play around with it a little bit on their own and see what God does in their mind and in their heart. I guess I'm also curious about how that bridges over to church community, because I know one thing about most apps, aside from some gaming platforms, is it's a solitary experience. And
Right.
How do you create the community? How do people get encouraged to join the body of Christ? Or there's so many people who have church hurt and they don't want to be involved. I've never in my time of life right now, I know more believers who are not involved in a church community in any way. They love Jesus, but they just don't. They're just not part of a church. And I'm curious what kind of connection there is.
Dr. Jeff, we talk about this all the time, so it's super fun. We say, how do we go from URL to IRL? And IRL is one of those, new millennial terms, I guess, in real life, right?
Yeah.
So, how do we go from URL to IRL? And it's interesting. So if we likened the big media right now is all talking about how we have the decline of Christianity in America happening, right? And they're referencing people in the pews as the decline of Christianity. So, we see things that we can draw some conclusions of that are similar, right? So let's just back up and say, okay, we're just scientists. We're looking at this, right? If we were to look at church as a physical location that you go and you get content from, what other like physical locations do you go to where you get content from?
Okay. Okay.
Movie theaters,
Right.
right? So if we went to a movie theater, so are we going to say that Hollywood is declining and movies are declining completely because people are going to movie theaters less right now? Well, we could draw that conclusion, but that's not what's happening. More movies and TV shows are being consumed than ever before.
Yeah.
Actually, they're just being consumed in a different place. So if we were to look at Christian content consumption over the last 24 months, it's up 52%.
Wow.
Christian content consumption in America is up 52% in the last 24 months. Now, church populations are declining, but that's a different problem we need to solve, right? So more people are seeking, more people are consuming Christian content than ever before. But how do we take that from URL to IRL, right? So I'm against saying that, Christianity is in decline in America because of that stat. It's just going to a different place.
Yeah.
The barrier to entry to going to a physical location, because we live such busy lives now, is higher. So gone are the days where you would get with your wife and get in the car and go to a couple churches in the 15-minute drive and see which one you like the best, right? What do we do now before we go to a restaurant? Dr. Jeff, before you go to a restaurant, new restaurant, you've never been there before, you're going to spend your hard-earned money, you're trying to decide if you're going to like it or not. What do?
I'm looking at the reviews.
You're going on Yelp, right? You're going on Google reviews, you're checking out photos, videos of people that have been there before. The same thing, the same behaviors that we're training people with restaurants and movie theaters, they're applying to church too. And they want to go in, they want to hear the pastor first. They want to see photos of the location. They want to make sure if it's right for them before they're going to go take their Sunday morning and decide if they want to go to a place that they're not going to like. They're going to do more research because more information is available to them now. So they have more information that they can make decisions. So, some of our goals and things with Pray.com is we're going to be helping people go from URL to IRL with some of the different ministries that are on the app. Now, we're very selective on the ministries that we have on the app that are providing content, but how do we, if people want to go to that next level and they want to go to a physical location near them, how do we recommend those locations? So it's currently an internal discussion right now with our leadership team at Pray.com and how we take care of those people and help shepherd those people to the right locations that they would want to go to, and how do we help them in that decision-making process. So, we talk about it all the time, and what behaviors are already happening, right? That people are doing before they check a physical location, before they get in their car and drive, right? Which is higher barrier to entry than pressing play, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I understand it's a different problem than we used to have. I mean, if you grew up going to church, you kind of felt a sense of a rhythm. You would do it every week. It's your Sabbath. You get up, you go to the church, you're part of the church community. But if somebody's coming to Christianity for the first time, that's not an ingrained behavior. There's no Sabbath impulse.
Yeah, that's right.
So how do you move people toward, let's make this part of your weekly pattern of life. This is your,
Mhm.
this is a calendar thing. I think that is
That's
fascinating.
right. That's right.
So this is fascinating to me, and I love the way you're thinking that through, and getting into the minds of a person, what their barriers might be, and all of that. Let's talk about the future of technology, just generally for the kingdom of God, because I think the last problem that you mentioned that you're dealing with is something similar to, say, a Billy Graham crusade. Somebody would come down the aisle, they would trust Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and then they tried to connect them with a local church, and that's where the real problems begin, because
Right.
there are a lot of differences between the churches, and the churches that sign up and say we want more people coming aren't necessarily the churches that you want them to go to. But but at the same time, you got to keep everybody involved, and you don't want to hurt people's feelings based on their different denominations. There's so many different aspects to that. But I want to just
Totally.
talk about the kingdom of God for a minute, because globally, what do you
Yeah.
see happening? I had always thought, well, this technology and the smartphone, the way it's being used, is fracturing society. There's no longer a social consensus. People aren't even consuming the same information. So the things that everybody thought we all knew, we don't actually know those things anymore. And it felt a little discouraging, but I have a suspicion that you're seeing this from a very different perspective.
Yeah, I am. And if we were talking about, there's lots of different technologies we could talk about, right? But I think the top of mind for everybody is, artificial intelligence, right? And how does AI technology work? Well, it works based on what you feed it. So if you're feeding AI technology things that are not truthful, then it's going to provide responses that are not truthful,
Mm.
right? And so, at Pray.com, we've developed some of our own AI technology that we're utilizing to help people help pastors and ministries save money and help them be able to reach more people in the world. So there's one way you can use AI technology for good, right?
Describe how that process works. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So right now within the app, when ministries are using our app to be able to reach our big and growing audience, they upload their content, and the artificial intelligence will automatically transcribe that content. It'll also create a title and description for the content that they put in, and then it also is translating that content in that person's voice. So, Dr. Jeff, you could have your podcast in Spanish, German, Chinese, if you wanted, and it would all get sent out. It would all be distributed at the same time across multiple platforms. And then Pray.com's artificial intelligence also brings back all the data and analytics to show you what content people are loving, what they're getting through, what they're sharing, what they're favoriting the most. So it helps you create content that helps people more.
Wow.
So that's part of the ways that we're using artificial intelligence within Pray.com is to reach more people groups in their native tongue through that translation technology, and then also transcription, and then translation of the transcription. Sorry, that's kind of confusing, but yeah. And it's really cool, because if we make a mistake, just like we're talking on this, this podcast right now, if we make a mistake in Pray.com's technology, you can go in and hit edit and change the mistake, and you would never know. And then it updates all the audio and video content all over with that mistake fixed. So it's a pretty cool technology that we've built, and we're continuously feeding our models with tremendous Bible teachers. So we're feeding it with biblical truth, right? And so eventually you'll be able to ask Praise AI questions on the Bible, and it'll come back with, you could come back with, what does Jack Graham say about that? Or what does, Tony Evans say about that? Or what does Dr. Ed Young say about that? Lots of different ways that you can use that technology for the good, right? And let's take it all the way back to we talked about behaviors and previous technologies. Let's go back to nuclear technology. We can power the world through, basically clean energy with nuclear technology, or we can blow up nations, right? I
Right.
think all new all new advancements in technology can be used for good or for evil, right? And the evil one will always want us to use it for evil, and there are people that will use it for that, but people continually have to use it for good to be able to fight back.
That's amazing. Well, it's true. Yeah. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to apply that to, so say somebody in the rising generation who's interested in technology, interested at maybe they're studying computer science, studying cyber or something like that. Give them a vision for where some of the needs are right now, where they might be able to think of themselves as a missionary moving into some place where their particular call would meet a specific thirst.
Lots of people have asked me to solve lots of problems when it comes to apps and technology, just because of my background. So, um, you know, people are trying to figure out problems with getting money into different countries because, Christians right now are being sent away from certain countries in the world. And being able to get money into those countries without it being taxed at an exorbitant rate to be able to help missionaries and Christian efforts in those countries is one way, problem that needs to be solved. I think there's no small amount of problems right now in the world, and the more that we can use AI technology to help save money and empower ministries to do more with less people, I think is something else that people should be thinking about if they were venturing into wanting to start a Christian business or wanting to start a ministry, a technology ministry. Also, cybersecurity is a big thing. The U.S. government just is now giving a lot of money to places of worship right now for cybersecurity and security of their facilities. So I would say that is something that's super important in the future as battle and war becomes more ones and zeros than it becomes bullets and guns. So yeah, I would say cybersecurity, money, being able to transfer money in different ways through different technologies to be able to save more money to use it for kingdom purposes. And then everything in artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to help get the message out to multiple people groups and help find out how we can create better mental health and spiritual health habits for people is really big on top of mind. So
I love that. I wouldn't have thought of those being sort of missionary initiatives for the time in which we live, but in many ways they are, in the same way that in the 1950s, people were using linguistics to learn how to communicate the gospel to individuals in their heart language.
yeah,
Now we're using the language of our time, the technology of our time to learn how to communicate biblical truth. Matthew, I love this. This is fascinating. So folks will want to go check out pray.com. And just keep in mind that this isn't just something you do as a user. This is something that you can use to find those who need some encouragement, need some help in their lives. I'm constantly having conversations with people who say something like, there's something missing, or I just need some more God in my life. This is the kind of thing that you can refer them to. It's an easy entry, a way for them to get into a personal daily habit of scripture study and prayer, and then begin to learn from some of the great teachings. I'll tell you how far this has come, Matthew. When I was first a Christian, my mother wanted to disciple me, but she didn't know what to do. She gave me this huge box lid from a big paper box full of cassettes. And as I was traveling around the country, I was just plugging in these little white cassettes of all these different preachers. And in many ways, even though I never went to any of their churches, they did disciple me.
yeah.
And so it's
Wow.
kind of fun to see how this is coming back around,
Yeah,
but in a whole new fun way. I love it.
absolutely. Me too. And if anyone was listening right now to the show and they wanted to download pray.com and maybe part of the app has a paid portion of the app. And I just wanted to give everybody the app for free today, if that's okay with you.
Oh, yeah.
So just for listening right now and getting to the end, go to pray.com/Matt and click on get the app for free. And you can get the entire app for free just by listening to today's show.
Wow. Okay. So pray.com slash
/Matt, MATT.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, that's fantastic. And we'll mention that in the intro and the outro and everywhere else we can too, because we want people to check that out. Well, thanks so much for your time today. It really means a lot.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you to my guest, Matthew Potter, for coming on the show. You can learn more about his work and download their app, which he's offered free to people who are watching or listening to this show. You can find, they have a lot of additional resources too, but just go to pray.com/Matt and get started. This podcast is a resource of Summit Ministries. At Summit, we come alongside the rising generation, their trainers, parents, and influencers, so that young people may know God's truth and become champions of a biblical worldview. To learn more about Summit Ministries or get resources to help the young people in your life embrace and share the truth that changes everything, visit summit.org. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.